It's hard to imagine how terrible it is to be diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer like leukemia. You can only hope that the medical staff will help you get through it. However, sometimes people forget that they are dealing with human beings who have their own evil plans. In today's story, we'll talk about the nurse who wanted to kill a seriously ill girl and the dog who saved her life. The morning began like any other for 20-year-old Riley White. She woke up in a hospital bed knowing she had another long day ahead of her. She would have to undergo chemotherapy, and this meant that she would feel nauseous for the next few days. Despite this, the girl still had a smile on her face. After all, she had something that made her happy. At her bedside was her faithful dog, a four-legged friend named Toy, who never left her side. Toy had been by Riley's side since she was diagnosed with leukemia. The dog never left her side and slept right at the foot of her bed. He was a true miracle for the girl because thanks to him, every day was easier to endure. The girl's mother, Tracy Cutlow, admitted that she even thought of getting a second dog to keep the first one company. But then she decided against it.
I'll go.
It was clear that Toy needed to stay by his mistress's side, and so he did.
Oh, God.
Dog didn't care that he couldn't sleep in his own bed. He just knew that he had to be close to the girl. Meanwhile, doctors were racking their brains over what to do with the tenacious leukemia. It seemed to them that they had tried everything, but the disease continued to progress. Soon, Riley was given a prognosis. If she didn't receive a stem cell transplant soon, the cancer could spread to her central nervous system, and the consequences would be dire. There was only one option left. It was risky and far from giving a 100% guarantee of success, but it was worth trying. Stem cells were found in a stranger, but fortunately, the girl's brother was also willing to donate part of his bone marrow. This was a huge boost for the doctors. They immediately got to work. Special procedure was performed, and the girl's condition stabilized. Her temperature normalized. The pain went away, and the possibility of recovery appeared. However, unfortunately, there was one problem. To prevent the transplanted cells from being rejected, Riley had to be in a sterile ward for 3 months. And she would have to stay there without her parents and friends. Even her brother, seeing her off, burst into tears. But she understood that this was necessary for her sake. The thing was, she wasn't allowed to see anyone except the doctors and nurses. So, when Riley was taken away from her family, her faithful dog Toy was also taken away. And although her mom promised to bring him as soon as possible, the girl was still upset. In the evening, lying down in a white, sterile room, Riley asked the nurse to let her talk to her parents. She was very worried about how Toy was doing. However, the nurse said that visiting hours were over and the girl's parents had already left. Don't worry, honey. Your mom and dad will definitely come to see you tomorrow. The nurse lied to her. And and she actually hoped that the poor girl wouldn't survive. It turned out that the nurse, whose name was Elizabeth Winkler, had been harboring a grudge against Riley since the first days she was in the hospital. Since then, she had a personal vendetta against the girl. Therefore, when nobody was looking, the nurse gave her extra medicine, which caused her blood pressure to rise sharply. The nurse also took great pleasure in taking away the girl's favorite things, including the dog. Winkler knew full well that Riley was attached to him and would get very upset. However, none of this stopped the malicious nurse. When the girl was at her most vulnerable, Elizabeth decided to finish the job. She took a syringe with air, which she then injected into Riley's veins. It should have been enough to send the girl into a deep sleep, after which the nurse planned to simply put her on a ventilator and let her die. However, something went wrong. Perhaps the girl's strong will to live got in the way, or maybe it was fate. The fact remains that Riley didn't fall asleep. She felt very bad. She tried to call for help, but no one came. Suddenly, the door opened and Toy ran in. Seeing his mistress in trouble, the dog started barking furiously at the nurse. And when he saw the syringe in her hand, he realized what she had done. With a loud bark, Toy jumped at the nurse, knocking the syringe out of her hand. Then he began licking his mistress's face, trying to wake her up. When the dog's actions alerted the other nurses, Elizabeth came to her senses. She immediately called the doctor and told them to come quickly. By that time, Riley had regained consciousness and was asking for water. The doctor, seeing what had happened, immediately understood what the nurse was up to. Elizabeth was fired on the spot and was subsequently charged with attempted murder. Also, the police searched everywhere for Riley's dog, Toy, but they couldn't find him anywhere. It turned out that after saving the girl, the dog had been put down. Yes, this is not a detail from some sadistic horror movie. This really happened in life. After the incident, Elizabeth Winkler was arrested. However, the woman denied everything, saying that she only wanted to make the girl fall asleep so she could take a break. She also claimed that she did know that Riley was awake and breathing when she left the room. However, the surveillance cameras in the hospital lobby showed that she was lying. The nurse was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As for Riley, after recovering from her illness, she became an animal rights activist and repeatedly told her story on TV. She hopes that after the hospital where the tragedy occurred will finally change the attitude of its staff towards patients and their animals. And here's the funny part. The hospital administration was so ashamed of what had happened that they provided the girl's parents with free treatment for Toy, although it didn't help. Of course, but the dog's life could have been saved if it weren't for Elizabeth's malice. What do you think of such an ending? Let us know in the comments below. Also, please like this video if you liked it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.